Et bonjour tout le monde, aujourd'hui je reçois Bread de MegaETH. How are you, Bread?
Hey, what's up, man? Pleasure.
I'm
I'm doing good.
very happy to have you. We are very excited about MegaETH. What's your role exactly in MegaETH?
Yeah, I actually joined MegaETH back in July. As like the community and growth side of stuff. As you've followed me, we've talked on Twitter. Like that's where
Mhm.
my presence is. So a lot of education, a lot of awareness, yapping. Now I guess as you hear it with Kaido. So
Yeah.
I joined as like the professional yapper and community builder.
Okay, okay. And how could you explain MegaETH to someone? Because a lot of people think all L2 are the same. How MegaETH is different?
Yeah, so okay, so I'll ask a question to you first before I frame it. What's the technical level of your audience? Are they pretty technical? Do they understand the concept of a layer two, or where do I go?
I think the best way is, to go gradually, going very basic, and then we can go in very technical detail. I like to have a part because a part of my audience is very advanced, so I like to
Mhm.
have both in the interview. So yeah,
Okay,
feel free.
so then I'll assume they're familiar with blockchain structurally, right? So they have blockchains, right? Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever. Ethereum's roadmap is to do what's the roll up scaling or L2 scaling, right?
Hmm.
So Ethereum can only do so much stuff. In order to do more stuff, process more transactions, they're integrating other blockchains to expand the capacity of the network. You have seen the described as layer twos. You've seen a lot of those come to market. There's over 200 of them now at this point, actually. Things like the
Hmm.
most notable ones are Base, Arbitrum. A lot of the top of the Linea is another big one.
Hmm.
Scroll. Every day there's another one. Um, a lot of these chains are defined as rollups, and what that means is that they settle proofs to Ethereum, but they also settle data availability to Ethereum, which is fine. It means that like you only have to trust Ethereum in order to validate like the truth of the chain. But the problem with that is that that means you're also limited by the capacity that Ethereum can actually handle. And as we talked about earlier, Ethereum is not the thing that processes a lot of transactions, at least not relative to a lot of faster chains these days. Solana, for instance, is processing a couple thousand transactions a second.
Hmm.
Ethereum is at like, 15, right?
Yeah.
So these other chains, again, Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, World Chain, if you're like AI these days, they all settle to Ethereum, but they can only do so much at a certain cost. Their costs are pretty expensive because they settle both their proofs and their data availability to Ethereum.
Hmm.
We are a team that has taken the approach of like, okay, we still want to settle our proofs to Ethereum, proofs being like the thing that's talking about the canonical state of the chain. But we're going to break away from the other aspect, which is where all the transactions happen on the chain are stored in blob space. We use EigenDA, and you can use other places like Celestia. We separate those things so that the cost bound is not there, and we are basically just taking what our blockchain is, the EVM, which is the virtual machine that Ethereum uses.
Hmm.
We're just hyper optimizing it, right? Our team, the two of the three founders are very technical. One is he went to MIT for consensus research. That was Lei. Yilong is another guy who spent all of his time writing papers, for PhD from Stanford in low latency systems. So like his entire job was working with data centers and getting information distributed throughout the data center in as low a time as possible, right? So we're talking nanoseconds, not even milliseconds, which is like fast in our space. So nanoseconds. So
Hmm.
they both came together, saw the structure of the landscape that is in blockchain, and said, okay, we can take what's there, use our skills to one, optimize a distributed system that's Elong, and two, make sure that we're remaining compliant with like blockchain systems, which is consensus and stuff like that with Lei.
Hmm.
And they're basically just building a single chain that sits on top of Ethereum, leveraging where we are in the stack. So like there's the L1, L2. We're offloading consensus, which again, if you're familiar with blockchains, I think you're familiar with that. For us, consensus means like we don't have to have a whole bunch of nodes agree on stuff. We have one machine, sequencer, that is going to process all of these transactions and do it very, very well because that's what our team can do. And
Hmm.
we're going to try to exceed what is perceived as possible, frankly, in the blockchain space. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what they call the real-time blockchain. It's like you can
Mhm.
process that. yeah, like very fast. I wonder, why did you choose? I'm a big fan of EigenDA. I really love it. But why did MegaETH choose EigenDA and not Celestia?
Yeah, so I think there's actually Elon had responded to this in a few places on Twitter. It's mostly about what we believe the upper, like, again, our ambitions as a project is just that we're going to build a system that frankly is too fast for most infrastructure to handle in the space. Like it can put out so much data that a lot of things will break. So like, okay, one of the problems is Ethereum couldn't handle the amount of data we're putting out. Fine. Who is the next person that can do that? Celestia currently today, if you look at how like the amount that they can process, it's something like, I think it's like 3.5 gigabytes or megabytes per second is the current metric. If you look at EigenDA, it's 15 megabytes per second. In our final state, like that we think we can achieve, not even final state, but like the upper end of the state that we can achieve now realistically before we start hitting like the laws of physics problems like bandwidth and everything else is going to require like 18 to 20 megabytes per second. So even EigenDA in all of the capacity that they can handle today still needs to be able to scale. And EigenDA right now is 5 times bigger than Celestia. So we just saw them as a partner that said, okay, they're closer to what we can achieve. They're also Ethereum aligned, right? They're building on top of Ethereum. It's not the same as blobs, right? Because you're introducing Eigen in between there, but it is still something closer to the ecosystem of Ethereum. And we want to be aligned with Ethereum to achieve our goals as best as we can. So the combination of those two things, and Lei, again, the guy who did consensus research, he's been funded by Ethereum Research. He actually wrote some papers. He wrote some of the Eigen paper with Freerom. So like there's a long history of working together there. So it was natural for us to leverage it.
Okay, amazing. And about, when MegaETH just launched, it said 1 minute gone block time, and just crazy, to think about it. How is that possible, actually?
Yeah. So I think backing up again, if in the EVM world, we talk about block times. Block times are kind of arbitrary as an L2 because of the word that I mentioned earlier, which is consensus, right? So why Ethereum has a 12-second block time? Everyone submits transactions to Ethereum. Ethereum gives itself 12 seconds, that's the time it takes to create a block, to organize these transactions, to create a block, to agree on the block, and then to start giving that block out to everyone else, right? So like that's why that 12 seconds is there, is to give all the nodes enough time to create the order, create the block, agree on the block, get it out for everyone else to consume it, right? Because you want to keep that consistent. It's all dynamic. Again, as an L2, because we don't need a distributed node of software, distributed nodes to actually create this block and agree on this block. We have one sequencer, right? That's the structure. We have one sequencer. That's the structure of all L2s, by the way. So it's not like just an us thing. All L2s have what's called a sequencer, which is a machine that processes this stuff. Our goal is to always have one machine that has the decision-making process of determining the order of the transactions and then sending it out. Like there is no one else that has to agree with. Now, that said, this is where structural differences are between other L2s. Like some are saying like, well, that's a centralizing force. It's one machine. That's against the ethos. We want to create a bunch of sequencers and then have the sequencers agree on something. It's decentralized. And the problem with that is like, okay, well, now you introduce the same problem, right? Consensus, right? Now if you have 5 sequencers that all are creating this thing simultaneously, they all have to create it. They all have to agree on it. They all have to like put this thing out and send it. With us, the difference we're doing, the tweak in the design is, okay, we'll have a sequencer, one sequencer, we'll have many sequencers, 15, 20, but it'll be a rotating system. So it's one active and then it falls out of slot, another one comes in, right? And then it goes out of slot. Now, how often they go out of slot is whatever, but it's always one that owns the slot and always makes the blocks by itself. It doesn't have to agree with anyone, because it doesn't have to agree with anyone. That time that was just traditionally on Ethereum, 12 seconds. On Base, it's 2 seconds. On Optimism, 2 seconds. On Arbitrum, it's 250 milliseconds. That time that they have to worry about agreeing on stuff that they have to keep built in, because we'll never introduce consensus to agree on stuff. Our goal is to shrink that time as much as possible. It's like we want a single machine to just truncate that so that it can immediately give that information out to the world. And we do that. The reason we want to do that is because if you look at the time lag for a user, like you submit a transaction that says, I place a bid of 1 ETH on an NFT, right? Simple example. you hit submit on the transaction. It takes time travel to go from you to the node, right? Then that's 100 milliseconds if it's across the world. That hands it over to the sequencer. The sequencer then has to process it, right? And if that's 2 seconds, so you had 100 milliseconds, which is, a 5% of 2 seconds, and then 2 whole seconds, which is a huge chunk of time, and then the travel back, right? Plus ingestion and time, whatever. But the full loop could be something like 2 seconds, assuming a 2-second block time, plus another 250 milliseconds. So it's a big, the block time, I don't have visuals here, but the block time takes up 80% of that time, right? So if we can shrink that 80% of the time down to, or 2 seconds down to 10 milliseconds, we're aiming for under 1 millisecond, then that means the total loop that it takes for you to do that to them, to come back to you, and then for someone else to accept that bid, now goes from 2 seconds plus 100 milliseconds plus 100 milliseconds. It takes 10 milliseconds plus 100 milliseconds plus 100. So like the bulk of the time is now just traveling information across the world. And that's when it's like, that's why it's really responsive. It can be really responsive. And that's our goal. We want to shrink it. We can shrink it. So it's our goal to shrink it as much as possible.
Okay. And about the rotation of sequencer, will it be permissionless or just,
Yeah, I mean, it's really designed, right? So like we're not even live on testnet publicly. Anyways, we have private testnet. So the rollout will be, we'll go live with one sequencer. It'll be our sequencer. Eventually, once it's up and stable, the system's working well, because like we're redesigning everything. So we got to make sure everything is playing nice. Once that happens, we will then introduce other sequencers not run by us. So I don't know what that, we haven't determined a number. Let's just say ballpark 10 to 15, right? Sequencers. So it won't be permissionless. I imagine, again, early design's not there. I would imagine we're going to have some kind of formal process to approve trusted parties to get them in. Once they make sure that they're good actors, they have economic stake, because that's another part of this. If we're going to open it up to like not only us are running the sequencers, we need to make sure that these other people are good actors. And if we are going to give them a monopoly on creating the block, right, full decision, that means they can censor, right? So like, and this is all sequencers right now, and that's why they want it decentralized. So we want to make sure that if we get to that point where someone else that's not us, who we have to trust to not censor people, like if you submit a transaction doesn't get rejected, that they have economic stake at play, right? That says like, okay, if you misbehave, and again, not designed, but like a council determines that you misbehaved, slash your stake, kick you out of the sequencer set, and then you no longer get your thing, right? And then rotate in the good ones and keep the good ones.
Yeah, I guess anyway, with that speed, you don't have a bad MEV, right?
That's the hope, right? Yeah, it's kind of the same philosophy as Solana, right? Like you hear Totally talk about it, it's like whenever you shrink the block times to so small, the opportunity for, because like typically, as you're kind of alluding to, the longer the block times, the more MEV that can take place, because more actors can look at it, make decisions, optimize, whatever. You shrink the block times to super, super small times, the actual opportunity is basically gone, right? Everyone just kind of rapid fire.
Okay, that's crazy, because I wonder what you can do with that speed. What do you think? What will be the use case? What are you waiting for? MegaETH.
Yeah, so for me specifically, I don't know that it's gonna immediately appear in like a user application. Right? Like I've talked about like crude examples of like literally just pushing a button and it responds to you. Like you can replicate a lot of that stuff. I think where it's gonna be a true level up is because we can provide this experience, not like we're talking about again the 10 millisecond block times and the 100 millisecond latency for you as a user, because you or I are different distances from wherever this machine will be. So like for me, it might be 75 milliseconds. For you, it might be 100 milliseconds. For someone else, it might be 10 milliseconds, right? Distance between us and the machine that's running the blockchain. So like our experiences will vary, and I don't know that it's going to be like there's going to be a world-breaking app that comes out specifically for that, but it does enable an overall ecosystem level up, specifically on the finance side, because like now, because we have a small cluster of sequencers that are rotating, they're predictable in where they are located. We can have professional players like market makers actually co-locate with the sequencers. Like for you and I, it's still 75 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds, whatever. But for them, they can consistently build in, we're going to be located next to a sequencer. It's 1 millisecond to the machine. It's 10 milliseconds, maybe even 1 millisecond to process it, 1 millisecond back to me, so that they can manage an order book on chain. And because our capacity is so high, it's cheap enough for them to manage an order book, constantly place and cancel orders to like run the order book. It's like our experience on DeFi products is now improved, not because we're getting really fast response time, although we are, but it's because another party that's professionally running stuff can finally come on chain. And because they can finally come on chain, and we're doing things, just expanding this a little further, because we're cutting our times down so low, we're opting to build something of an integrated experience, so like the Oracle, right? Oracle's, again, rely on latency. So we're trying to co-build like into our indexer, or not indexer, the sequencer in Oracle inside the sequencer, right? Because we can predict it, we can optimize for it. So then now you have a highly efficient Oracle embedded in the actual sequencer that works with the market makers right there, so that now the entire ecosystem levels up a little bit because all of that stuff is built into the chain. It's integrated, kind of what we're referring to it as. So that's kind of my hope. And then obviously the social games, like again, because our capacity is so high, we're optimizing for performance. There's stuff like Biomes is a game that's coming on chain. And because of the capacity is so high, they're putting like the literal movement of the player on chain, right? So because the latency is so low, you can actually put like the physical movement of the player on chain, which means now, because that's on chain, you can build into your smart contracts like, hey, if this player is in this physical location, which again is on chain now, your smart contract can say, give them this NFT. So you can go into a game, climb up a loop, get to the top, and because it shows you're actually at the top in the actual map on chain, the smart contract lets you mint an NFT, something like that, right?
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. To me, that makes a lot of sense because you have Ethereum as a security, but a lot of people are worried because they think like MegaETH is like just a big server, just to say. What could you say to someone that is a bit afraid to put its money in MegaETH when it's ready, of course?
Yeah. It's like that's a valid concern, right? It's actually a concern not even specific to us. Like, the criticism, yeah, it's a big sequencer, but look at the construction on every L2 right now, right? I think Arbitrum is the only one that's approaching, or one of like 3 that are approaching stage 2, and it's been out for 3 years now, whatever it is, right? Base is still stage 0. They're all mostly multi-sigs. So that is just to say that it's a valid concern for all L2s, not even MegaETH. And then the thing that helps people resolve that in their minds is the fraud proof system, right? So like we're going to initially leverage, at least that's the plan now, is to do optimistic processing, so fraud proofs, just like Base, just like Optimism, that whole stack of Arbitrum. But we're also looking at ZK. As soon as it's ready, the problem is, as with most things with us, it's not fast enough for us. Like we need things to be very, very performance based in order to do it. So once cost and proving times come down for ZK, then we really hope to implement it. But anyways, the thing is just to say we have the exact same roadmap of all L2s. We will always have, like, we're aiming for the fraud system or the proof system, so that if you have your funds on Ethereum, even if it is just a big machine, which ours would be like the best big machine, you still have the ability to get around the machine and go directly to Ethereum and say, give me my ETH. I want out, like, give me away. It'll be the exact same system that Base, Arbitrum, Optimism, all these things have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that anyway your funds are on ETH. But I wonder about composability because you use EigenDA, you don't use blobs. Do you think that could be a problem, or that doesn't matter?
I think it'll be a problem alignment wise, I guess I'll say. Like, so, and what I mean by that, for people who are listening who maybe aren't familiar with like the nerd debates in on crypto and Ethereum, so like alignment, quote, I'm doing air quotes here, for Ethereum is like you do things to show you're in the same mindset as like the core Ethereum stuff, and that core ethos of Ethereum is like everyone play nice, we grow together, all that stuff, right? It's the infinite garden of everyone doing stuff. And so that is just to say, we will be interoperable in the sense that like we'll have bridges in and out. Like teams will be incentivized to do it. We have teams that we're working with to help get that stuff set up. But for us, it is not a priority because it doesn't have to be a priority for us. And what I mean by that is, like, you look at, again, I'll use Base as an example, Optimism, the whole super chain. They need it to be a priority for them because their chain can't get big enough fast enough to support a lot of people, right? They have to do this horizontal scaling of like, one machine, like, using their actual figures of throughput right now. Like Base is juicing their sequencer right now, week over week. They're up to like 20 megagas per second, and that megagas is a metric for quantifying how much throughput the chain can actually handle. So megagas is the same as like megabytes, just measured in gas, whatever, just accept that. And they're, again, 20 megagas, about 100 transactions per second. They need to make sure they're interoperable with Optimism because they're at capacity. They can't do any more. 100 transactions per second, 20 megagas, and Optimism's at like, let's say, I think it was like 8 megagas, 20 transactions per second, right? Just kind of throwing figures because I'm not familiar with them. So they need to make sure those things can play nice together, because it's the only way you can add transactions without adding costs, is to spread that workload out. Thus, because we're vertically scaling as an L2, like it's bridge in, and like you won't need to leave, right? So like we don't care about playing nice with others, because our goal is not to like make you have to play nice with everyone, because we will continuously push engineering wise to expand the capacity of our chain to as sufficient as we can. Similar to like a Solana, right? Solana's entire principle is like, come in and don't fucking leave, right? You don't have to get out of here, because we're going to continue to push the hardware. We're going to continue to push the software so that you don't have to leave. Everything's composable, and you have a good time. So we will be much more composable within our ecosystem, because our goal is to invite everyone within our ecosystem and not have to force them to leave. And then, yeah, there'll be some composability breakdown probably with other chains, because whatever, but yeah, that's my general thought processes.
Okay, I have a question, but it's more about your side, not really MegaETH. But I think you've done a thread about Validium saving Ethereum, which is a bit. A lot of people are saying blobs are saving Ethereum because blobs are paying directly to Ethereum. I really like that point of view. Do you think really MegaETH and other can save Ethereum?
Now you're talking about value accrual. This is the fun part. Okay,
Yeah,
so
always.
this is tough, right? So okay,
Yeah,
so
it's tough.
like rewinding for people who aren't familiar with my post, it's like I've had a lot of stuff about like value accrual within the Ethereum ecosystem, right? We have Ethereum, the asset on main chain, and then we have a bunch of these L2s, right? A bunch of these L2s either have their own token or they don't, but they capture a lot of fee revenue based on user transactions, and they pay a little bit back to Ethereum based on the proofs and if they use blobs or not. Blobs being the transactions batched and posted down. So the thought is like, if these L2s exist and they're capturing 95% of the value of their users through fees and keeping them themselves, and then just kind of throwing some pittances back to Ethereum to settle is in quotes. Again, 95% ish. How does Ethereum, the token, accrue value? So now there's two camps of thought here. One, there's value accrual through literal like fees paid, right? Ethereum has always had a lot of fees paid to it because it can't handle a lot of transactions, so it grows quickly and gets expensive, and it does it way before a lot of these other high performance chains. So people are saying, okay, Ethereum doesn't accrue fees as much anymore because there's no users. The users are now existing on layer twos. Where does the value come from? So the thought is, with these layer twos, the value is in using Ethereum as the asset of exchange, store of value, whatever, within this new ecosystem that they've created. So like these layer twos enable new experiences. These new experiences are denominated in ETH. And because people need ETH to do the new experience, we use Virtuals. Virtuals is an AI project on Base. People are buying ETH to play in the Virtuals ecosystem on Base. And there's value there. How much value is there is the question. And it's kind of loosely defined as like moneyness, right? It's being used as a medium of exchange in this case. So I'm seeing this and I say, okay, there's two ways to do this. Again, fees and then moneyness. I think the logical conclusion of this is like, we look at, I feel like I'm picking on Base, but Base is a great example of it. So I'm just going to keep focusing on it. You look at Base. Base enables cool experiences, but it can't enable maximum cool experiences because it's limited by ETH. And it's the justification for paying, like just to the justification of why it can't scale and do those things is, again, because it settles everything to ETH, data availability and proofs, which is holding it back from doing the maximally cool experiences. And it's not paying a ton back to ETH anyway. So it's capturing a lot of value, not as much value if it was super cool, super awesome, super unbounded, and it's paying some stuff back to ETH, but not a lot back to ETH. So it's like this middle ground of it's not really paying a lot, but it's also not able to do as much as it probably wants to do because it's stuck to ETH. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to see two ends of the spectrum emerge. Base rollups is something that's come forward.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, base rollups is, we talked about the decentralized machine sequencer that's run by these L2s. What base rollups do is they offload that to Ethereum proper, right? So like instead of a big machine run by the team doing it, sometimes it's still there, but like they take the transactions that generate on the L2, they hand it off to Ethereum validators, and Ethereum sequences the transactions, and they capture some of the revenue, right? Usually the priority fees. So there's more fees paid to Ethereum in that instance because it uses Ethereum for the sequencing of transactions. Awesome. So that's the one side of the spectrum. It's a L2 construction that pays more in fees. I think that's a better mimetic thing for value accrual. It's very direct. It's very visceral. You can see it. You can feel it. You can show up on charts. Like everyone loves it, right? And you get the added benefit of, because Ethereum does that stuff, it adds composability to the L2, right? So I can have my L2, which is a separate blockchain, but because the person building my blocks has awareness of Ethereum, I can do things on my L2 that has awareness of a CryptoPunk on L1. It's hugely valuable. There's a lot of history there, a lot of time, a lot of things that people want assets, right? I can use my CryptoPunk as a collateral on a loan on L2. Sick. Let's do that, right? That sounds great. So there's that end of the spectrum, but because you're using Ethereum on more stuff, it can't be that performant, right? At least not without like additional construction. It's going to take a while to do this, right? We have to work on pre-confirmations. There's a lot of structures to come in place. But it's not as performant. Can't do as much super cool new experiences, but it can do a lot of old experiences, and it pays more fees. And I think the total other end of the spectrum is stuff like us, MegaETH, where I say, okay, so the fees is covered there. The other aspect that we think accrues value, I say we think because we're still figuring this stuff out, is the moneyness aspect of like cool experiences denominated in Ethereum. I'm like, okay, well, MegaETH has to reach the levels of performance and cool experiences that we think we can provide. Ethereum straight up cannot support us. Its capacity is not big enough. I mentioned earlier the EigenDA, the capacity that they have. Even EigenDA, which, if you look at the numbers that are put out for Ethereum blob space dank sharding in 2026, that's like, I'm going to guess in my head, but it's something like 100x lower than what EigenDA is today. And we need EigenDA to be bigger for us already. So it's not even within years of possibilities for us. So like, okay, go to the total end of the spectrum, have an experience like us that breaks away from the limitations of Ethereum blob space. You introduce trust assumptions with that now with EigenDA, but the things it can unlock is through the roof, right? It's a totally different paradigm inside of crypto, right? And so now my thought is, you have one in the spectrum handling the one value prop, which is the fees, and then our value prop is going to be, we can unlock truly cool, unique, weird shit and denominate it in ETH, and then that will be higher on the spectrum than like what Base is capable to do, or rollups broadly are capable of doing, because their upper bound is capped by settling to Ethereum. So like that's my general vision of those two things.
Okay, so you see layer 2 or Validium as an extension of Ethereum, not something that cannibalize, right?
So like, yeah, so cannibalization is the big meme, right? Like, oh my god, it's
Yeah.
taking everything. I think you can interpret all of these things that way. I think that comes more from the mindset of the people building Ethereum mainnet, because I don't think they were forced to push users away. I think they become forced, like it becomes something of a parasite whenever the user that would have existed on L1 now feels like they have to leave to go to these L2s. And now it's like really taking things away. So I think had Ethereum not just straight up said like, everyone get the heck off of L1 and go play here, then it wouldn't have been seen as parasitic. And then so like, but accepting that that's our reality, they did that phase and like we're dealing with it now. It's almost just like we're going down this path. Why not go down this path to the maximum? Right? Like let's just own it, do it, and do it unbounded on one end of the spectrum. So.
Okay. Understand. And if we can go, a bit technical, you have different nodes, right? You have like 4 or 3 nodes different. What are they? And if they say something permissionless or something like this to participate.
Yeah, we will have stuff that can be permissionless, which is gonna be great. So, okay, so some of the narratives you'll see with our marketing is that we have a specialized node setup, and what that ultimately means is like most of these, like if you really start peeling back the layers, most of these L2s do have a specialized node setup. It just depends on where you draw the circles around the node that makes up the network, right? But for us specifically, I'll highlight the problem that we introduce and then how we solve it with a construction that is not typically seen in other L2s. Actually, it's not. We created it. So, okay. So I mentioned earlier that we plan on being so fast, so performant, a bunch of data going everywhere. The problem with that, because we're building this system, is the EVM. Now it's parallelized. We redesigned the database so that like the accessing it is much more efficient. The data doesn't grow as much, like state growth, all this shit. In blockchain, once you hit a certain threshold of like, okay, you're putting out a lot of data, you have the next problem of like, how does everyone keep up with that information, right? Like you're putting out so much stuff. How do we, one, ingest it in a real amount of time? And then two, how do we prove that you're not like lying to me, right? Like that's verifiability is the next thing. So the typical word you'll hear around this is you have the sequencer emitting all this data, right? It's processing transaction, blocks are going out. You have full nodes that exist within the network outside of that. And the full node is the thing that receives the blocks from the sequencer and says, okay, I have the block, I have the transactions in the block, and I have all of the previous blocks that you've sent to me, right? Because it's being streamed to it. I'm going to rerun all these transactions that you just gave to me and make sure that it's good, right? If these things can actually be generated, right? Like if you don't have any money in your account and you send me a transaction that says, oh, Joestar actually just sent you an ETH, I can go, no, he doesn't have an ETH. I can prove he doesn't because I have the history of all that stuff, and I can reject it, right? But the problem is, like, you don't want to have these full nodes in the network because, again, our sequencer is very robust, it's very big, 100 terabytes of storage. Like, it's a beefy machine in a data center. How do you reliably get someone like you or myself at home to have a PC that can receive the data, rerun the data, and actually prove right or wrong in a fast enough time frame, which is tough, right? Because we're trying to push the upper limits. So that exists in all networks. We're starting to face problems because we push a lot to these nodes. We do have the hardware requirements. We have it optimized so that they're not like insane, but they are larger than a lot of networks. It's like bigger than an Ethereum node, for instance. I think it's just between Solana and Aptos nodes. I have a spec. I can send it over to you. Our thing is like, okay, we wanted to bring down the lower bound, the requirements, the hardware requirements and the work requirements of letting people keep up with the sequencer. So full nodes will be permissionless. Anyone can run one. It's just like, can you afford it? Do you want to like have the bandwidth speeds? Can you actually like deal with it? Then we have another thing called a replica node, which is something that instead of getting the full block from Ethereum, and it has lower hardware specs, it's actually lower hardware specs than an Ethereum full node. So it's very light. All it receives from the sequencer is the state diffs instead of every single transaction to then rerun the transactions. What a state diff is like, instead of you coming to me and saying, you'll be the sequencer. Instead of you as the sequencer saying every single transaction that happened, I sent you 1 ETH, you sent me 1 ETH, I sent you 1 ETH, like me having to do that back and forth. It only depends on what happens at the end. It's like a crude example is you send me an ETH, I send you an ETH, you send me an ETH, I send you an ETH, right? The net change of that is 0 because we just sent an ETH back and forth, right? So instead of you sending me those 4 transactions, you just say nothing changed because nothing changed, right? Ownership didn't change. And that's much easier for me to process. Now, you're trusting someone in that situation. So the trust is we're trusting the sequencer to be honest. And that's a problem because trust assumptions mean it could be lying to me. You can't just do that. So our solve for this, so that's the replica node, right? It receives just state diffs. Our solve for this is we have a cluster of other nodes called the prover network, and these are also permissionless. Anyone can run it. And these provers are even lighter. They're very, very small. And all they do is sit there and check blocks for validity, and then they generate proofs, and they send the proofs over to the replicas. So now the replicas, instead of redoing everything, they just get the state diff from you, the sequencer, and they get the proof from the prover network. There's a bunch of them constantly checking all blocks, sending that over to me, and I just grab the receipt, grab the proof, grab the receipt, grab the proof, and I just, okay, cool, and keep checking it that way. So the workload is way lower. The hardware capacity is way lower. Introduces, again, some trust assumptions, but it's the ability for a new subset of users to opt into the system, run these things, and verify that things are correct. And then we have the typical stuff like light clients, but those are the big ones. That triangle relationship of sequencer, provers, and replica node is the unique innovation that we have to allow people to keep up with this insane amount of data that we're putting out, or will be putting out.
Yeah. Okay, that's very clear. I just got fuel today, and we talk a bit, and they have
cool.
very cool. Yeah, fuel. Sorry, and they have a very cool technology, but they lack, memetic. And I think MegaETH is really good at that. They have very cool technology, but they also have a good memetic. How do you see that, and how is that possible?
So you're just talking about like the vibes, I guess.
Yeah, it's really cool vibes.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I joined the team in July, so I'm picking up a little latent vibes from them, but I am guiding them through a little bit of a rebrand. So they initially came out, when they came out stealth, they had a mecha rabbit and all this stuff. It was kind of robotic, futuristic, whatever. The vibes now are really curated by actually, so a researcher on our team, Jen, his wife is a professional designer. They've been together. She's amazing, super talented, and she does all this retro futuristic stuff. She's just kind of taken over everything as of about when I joined back in July. So, or no, not July. I joined in November. I talked to them in July. I joined in November. Back in November, she started doing a lot of stuff. So a lot of the vibes that we're trying to curate comes from one, the aesthetic vibes that she's now doing, which is really, really talented, is retro futuristic thing. We're kind of a designer brand. Late LARPing as a blockchain is kind of how we do it. It's very good. And then the other thing comes from the team ethos of wanting to kind of return to the ways of old. So we think we all recognize that the best way to build a community and a culture, of ecosystem, all this stuff, is to have wealth effects throughout the ecosystem, right? To give ownership to people, to have them grow with you, have a stake at the table or a seat at the table, skin in the game, as we say, and ultimately just to try to be as democratized as we can. So how we've achieved that, right? So early on, again, this project has been around for 2 years or 3 years. 2 of those years were with just the technical founders doing proof of concept, stuff like that. And then Bing came on at the beginning of last year. They didn't raise a lot of money, right? The big headline was that they raised 20 million, or is it 30 million, from Joe Lubin, Vitalik, a few other people. But they've turned down a lot of raising opportunities from VCs so that they could do things like the Echo round that we just did, right? And the Echo round was on Kobe's platform, where instead of raising $10 million from one person or a small group of people, we went on the platform and said, if you're an accredited investor, we'll give you a investment in our protocol at as a 1 ETH price, basically, is what it was. And we ended up getting 3,000 people that were able to do that. And so it's just a general ethos of the team that one, the aesthetics of amazing Rose is her name. And then two, the ethos that we need to make sure that we allow the team, or allow users, the community, to feel involved and have literal exposure to the project in whatever ways we can. And we're looking for more ways to do that. We're trying to do it. It's kind of tough right now. You can't do just a straight up ICO. Echo was kind of that. So we're looking for a lot of opportunities to continue to do that in a bunch of different ways, so that crypto native people can get the amount of exposure to us that they want, in the ways that they can.
That's really cool. It's crazy when you see, the layer 2 having fundraising 200 millions. So yeah, very different.
Right. Yeah, I mean, those are Monad raised a couple $100 million, Bear Chain raised a couple $100 million, which is it's awesome. The teams can do a lot of stuff with that, but It also
Mhm.
means that by the time you get to TGE or launching the protocol, right now you have a lot of people with a lot of tokens that need to offload at some point, and you reduce the opportunity that you can give away to the community at that point.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And what about Mega Mafia?
Yeah,
Yeah, what is it?
yeah, that's some more vibes. Yeah, okay, so our design is opinionated, right? So opinionated in that, like, again, everyone's doing the Ethereum play nice thing of like, oh, decentralize the sequencer. Oh, like we're not here. Let's grow the pie. It's everyone's playing nice together, and we're
Mhm.
just like, look, dude, if we're gonna lean into this, we're gonna be an L2. We're gonna fucking own being an L2. And we're gonna beat L1s because we're an L2, and we're taking
Mhm.
advantage of it. So opinionated in that fact, opinionated towards performance. We're taking that same cultural approach to like how we're upstarting the ecosystem. Ecosystem being like projects we want building on the ecosystem. So Amir on our team, awesome. He came from a venture firm, and he's been helping uh, build a small cluster of app teams that are growing with our ecosystem, Bing as well, and they're doing it through finding people who are good people. We want to make sure that we associate with great people. So they're good people. They're very talented. They have like a 0 to 1 idea, like something I think like is unlocked by having a very performant chain. Like I said, 100% on chain game. Or we have a guy that's doing like a VPN on chain. We have another person that's trying to do 3D models of the entire world, right? Instead of like you go and you take pictures of the pyramids, right? And you walk all around it. It's like, well, if you do this the right way, you can actually get a 3D model from it. And oh, guess what? That 3D model can then be used in a game, right? Because it's all whatever. So kind of weird. Some stuff's kind of weird, but it's all just like things that can be unlocked. Mega Mafia is the name of like all of these founders that we have found, these projects that we have found, and their teams that have entered into our. Well, it's basically an accelerator where we co-live with them. Right? There's we just recently had Bangkok for DevCon. The month before that was in Chiang Mai, where Shu, I met the team over there, Shu and Amir and all these guys just basically lived in a hotel that they rented out for 30 days with the teams, got them all out there, had the hotel, and everyone was just building
Wow,
for 30 days, giving feedback to
crazy.
each other, yeah, building together. And then, like, not even that, but also we're trying to make sure that um, there's a little bit of camaraderie between all the teams so that, like, for instance, we have Valhalla, the perps protocol, and we have caps labs, which is our stable coin, and then we have DTE, which is the dex. Like, we are trying to make sure that they're all friends with each other, frankly, and so that they can unlock each other's platforms through each other. So like the leverage that is brought forward on GTE is pulled from Teco Finance, for instance, something like that. So like just to really build that synergy amongst them, to like read it, to level up everything, do like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts situation.
Mm.
So that's what the team is. It's, again, 15 people in the accelerator. We help them through raises. We help them find devs. We help them build out our product, all those things, and really try to bring them to market.
Okay, that's awesome. And yeah, I wonder, I really like Solana. It's like a very good trading layer one. It have
Yeah.
a huge liquidity, fast,
Mhm.
but sometimes I would like to have a good L2 that behave like Solana. Do you think MegaETH could be a competition to Solana?
We want to beat Solana. Like that's what we want to do. Like it's like
Nice.
I I visualize. So like there's two problems with it. One is like the EVM is different than Solana, right? Everyone's
Mhm.
pointed out the approve and swap problem of the EVM.
Oh,
Like it's kind of annoying, right?
yeah, yeah.
Thankfully for us, like we'll be EVM equivalent. But thankfully for us, because we're an L2, we can adjust if we need to, and things like EIP 7702 is coming. So like we're hyper optimizing to like try to embed future looking EIPs so that we can provide the best user experience that we can. It's like that'll fix some of the user experience stuff. The other side of the thing is, yeah, just straight up performance and making sure that the flow is good and you have good wallets, all that shit. So yeah, it's our goal, frankly, is to, like, I envision us as because we're so finely tuned to being an L2, we can't go be an L1 because we would need consensus to do that. So it's like there's Ethereum and then there's us, and we're almost interwoven because we can't leave. So it's us combined going against Solana. I don't really care about other L2s. We want to go against Solana, Monad. Um, yeah, that's the game to win.
So you won't have a account abstraction?
We will.
Ah, you will. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, Awesome.
Yeah, we
And
want native account abstraction. We want like integrated wallets, all that stuff. Yeah.
awesome. And yeah, it will be on MetaMask or Ruby, right?
Yeah, it's EVM equivalent, so like they
Yeah.
can port over quickly. And obviously, like we want to make sure we partner with the best to like get it ready day one. But all the EVM tool set, that's the reason we stayed with the EVMs, because like there's a huge network effects. There's a lot of tooling. It's Ethereum. We want to make sure that we feel comfortable to Ethereum native builders.
Definitely. And I see a lot of people excited about testnet, mainnet. What's on the roadmap for MegaETH?
Yeah, we're in actually private testnet now. I've been trying to bug the team to get some of the metrics out, but they're so performance focused that like every time they have numbers they tell them to me, I'm always like, dude, I want to talk about this. This is awesome. They're like, all right, well, we got some cool shit that we can fix. It's pretty easy. Next week they'll be even better. Next week they'll be even better. So it's like they keep ramping up. So I'm excited to like say private testnet. Like the Mafia team's already building on it. There should be releasing some performance metrics here. You've seen maybe some tweets from like our stablecoin just said like the other day, he's just like, dude, we've never had a problem where our infrastructure, like the indexer to pull and stuff, he's like, we can't keep up with the chain. So it's like it's presenting a problem. Like we have to shift our focus a little bit to actually like build just our infrastructure. That's awesome. So that's just to say testnet private is running now. Public testnet, we're aiming to have it out Q1. So here in the next few months, once that happens, yeah, we want to get everyone out playing on it, trying to break it, do all that stuff.
Okay. And there is some dApps you already see that you want to try or something like this?
Yeah, I mean, so we are spinning. So we have the Mafia team, 15 projects there. Some of those are just like, yeah, I want to see what the equivalent experience is on like just the normal text, whatever, just to see like the responsiveness stuff. So that's like the initial stuff. That's unsexy, right? It's just swap a token, cool, done. The other thing is like some of the gaming stuff. We have a couple of AI projects that are with us. Some of them just doing AI launches. Another one is like AWE, Autonomous World Engine. If you remember on Cyber with Ethereum back in the day, it was like a gallery you can go and log, like share your NFTs. The founder of that, Ryan, is one of the Mafia, and he is building AWE, which is an extension of what on Cyber was. And he was like, he came out of stealth last week, and it showed that like it was a plugin that plugged into Solana, right? And the game itself was like, oh, you could see the tokens coming from the sky, and as they would be launched on Pump Fund, they would come from the sky, and the size of the box was the size of the market cap. So it was just like a cool, like natural experience with like the speed of Solana, which was kind of fun. And he's like, so seeing that kind of stuff, but like turned up a notch to like create things on with a even faster chain. So I'm excited to see stuff like that. And then, we're talking about Mafia, but we actually have an open builders program that people have like are starting to collect in just to like see what they can build with high performance stuff. And like a lot of people are just frankly want to try to break it. So because they think it's fast, or they want to see how fast it actually is. So we have a lot of people interested in that.
Okay, awesome. I just have like two last questions.
Sure.
First, is there a subject I didn't mention you want to talk about?
Just anything in particular?
Anything.
I'll say like, so I just, like I said, I joined the team as like the person that's trying to build mindshare on Twitter, and like build a little bit of a cult around Mega. The reception has been good, but I feel like I need to keep improving the actual social presence of the chain. So I'm looking for warriors to be on the timeline with me. So this is just kind of an open call. We're also doing another initiative on like the general ethos of the community we're trying to build is just you either educate or you entertain. So we've done a few rounds of a quiz that is just like a crypto broad topic quiz. So you come, you take its 100 questions, 30 minutes, covers everything from Bitcoin to like which NFT was popping off in 2017 to like how Solana's doing to what's MegaETH's consensus mechanism. It's not one. Stuff like that. And we've got a really good reception on that, just like broadly across crypto, where people are asking us to do this like an interview process, right? Like they want to take the quiz that we created for that. So if you haven't done it, I'll give you one after the show.
Oh yeah.
And so we did that. So I would say that the reception's actually been pretty good of like the people testing their own knowledge against crypto to see like kind of how they keep up with both crypto culture and whatever. And we're going to continue to expand that. So if anyone listening to this likes doing the educational stuff, kind of wants to test to see how good they do, hit me up. Just send me some DMs. Always open for that stuff.
Okay, awesome. And now last question is not about MegaETH, it's about you, you know. You probably have some experience in crypto, a lot. What would be your advice to a young investor or just someone that is interested in the subject?
Yeah. Honestly, so like my history is that I just got nerd sniped by crypto. So like I got involved a couple years ago. I'm not
Okay.
I'm not a trader. Like I'm just frankly, it's just my brain doesn't make that connection between like something's happening. How can I make money on it? I'm
Mhm.
really nerd sniped by the again we talked about value earlier, or the structural differences between blockchains. I guess it's interesting to me.
Mhm.
You're kind of same there. And it's just to say that Twitter is the nexus for conversation on crypto Twitter. So I'm sure
Mhm.
if anyone's listening, they know you have a Twitter presence. I would just implore anyone who wants to get embedded in the ecosystem. I wish I would have been on crypto Twitter whenever I first discovered crypto. I did it all through Reddit way back in the day. Um,
Mhm.
and that was 2017. Did that for a few years and didn't get on crypto Twitter till like 2021. So I would just encourage people to one, make sure that they're aware of the ecosystem on Twitter, and then because you find great information there, and then two, don't be afraid to just like constantly talk to people, ask questions, do whatever. I know you and I have like, gone back and forth a few times on just various just like technical concepts and stuff and what we believe on stuff. And it's
Mhm.
never like it doesn't have to be malicious. Like you can disagree with stuff unless you're talking about Mert. I got in a fight with Mert this weekend. Um, like it doesn't have to be like a malicious thing. You can disagree with stuff and just like have
Yeah.
conversations. And I
Mhm.
think it is like it can be really intellectually stimulating to come and just like kind of see what the current vibes are. So that's what might be my encouragement. Just come throw out your stuff, and you can totally get a job in the industry that way. Like I don't trade. I just throw out my thoughts on products, crypto, whatever. That allowed me to grow my follower count, and that's ultimately how I ended up getting on the team for MegaETH.
Mhm. Okay. Well, that's perfect. Very good advice. Well, thanks a lot. You know, a lot of people are really excited about this, even in France. So
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, I'm very happy for this interview, and yeah, hope the best for MegaETH. Really,
Yeah,
really.
thanks for having me, man. It's been awesome.
Thank you, and see you.